a lot for us, especially for those fans that have stuck with Star Wars through all the criticism of the prequels, which I still love. To see this be able to be a success again, and I think consciously and subconsciously, it also is a desire to know that this is going to be with us forever. I mean, look, Star Wars The Force Awakens could have done half as good as it did, and we'd still be getting movies, long past you and I are all, dead and buried and gone to our own galaxy far, far away. But be that as it may, we just know that we're going to get a lot more Star Wars because of how successful it's been. We want it to be everything that we dreamed it could be. And it's interesting to note that the success of this, and I can't say it enough, the success of this is also being driven by, and I haven't seen anybody really cover this yet, and maybe it's not time, because, China's the last big to do for now. As soon as we get through China and it's open there for a few weeks, then things begin to die down and we see where it lands. Then things are going to get quiet. Our attention will be prepared to shift to Rogue One, but that probably won't fully shift to Rogue One until after we get the Blu-ray of The Force Awakens, probably in April, and then we get all the deleted scenes. Word is that we're not going to be getting an extended cut of the film so far, but we are going to be getting a bunch of deleted scenes on when the DVD and the Blu-ray comes out. And of course, now I've gone and I've lost my train of thought on this. But this is kind of the last big hurrah in terms of storylines before we start shifting our attention away from The Force Awakens. Oh, this is what I was going to talk about. That's right. But I haven't seen anybody pick up on the social implications of the success of this movie, because it really does match very, very closely to the success that Star Wars A New Hope had when it came out. It really parallels what we are looking at as a society right now as well. The cynicism right now in the country, this election cycle. You look at the quality of movies that are out right now. Look, The Hateful Eight, it's not doing very well. Not a huge shock. That movie Joy with Jennifer Lawrence, not doing very well. The only other movie that's even given The Force Awakens a run for its money, and it still beat it, is the Leonardo DiCaprio Inarritu movie Revenant, which I don't, sort of a more of an art house Western. But, all those movies are very downbeat. They're not optimistic. I mean, Hateful Eight has hate in the title. And that was a very similar circumstance to what we were getting in the box office when Star Wars when Star Wars A New Hope came out. Movies were very downbeat. They weren't optimistic. And this, again, Star Wars was able to go and recapture what, makes Star Wars so special. And we were able to go along for this ride and be taken somewhere else, and it's fun, and everybody can go and enjoy it. Now, I want to get to some email commentary. Before I do, and we're going to talk a little bit about Rey, and then we're going to get into Rogue One. I finally got my hands on this list, and this was compiled by David Wong at Crack.com. This is the list of the highest-grossing movies for each of the 10 years before Star Wars came along in 1977. Okay? And putting the genre first. So check this out. So you go like this. 1967, the comedy drama The Graduate. 68, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Again, top-grossing films, highest-grossing films. 69, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, action western. 70, romance drama love story. 71, Fiddler on the Roof, musical. 72, The Godfather, right, gangster drama. The Sting was 73, heist movie. Blazing Saddles, screwball comedy. 74, 75, horror monster movie Jaws. 76, inspirational sports drama Rocky. Now, compare this to the last 10 years after Star Wars came out. Okay? 2005, Star Wars Episode 3, action sci-fi. 2006, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, action fantasy. 2007, action fantasy, Spider-Man 3. 8, action fantasy, The Dark Knight. 9, action sci-fi, Avatar. 2010, animated comedy, Toy Story 3. 2011, action fantasy, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. 2012, action sci-fi, The Avengers. 2013, action sci-fi, The Hunger Games Catching Fire. 2014, war drama, American Sniper. And 2015, action sci-fi, Jurassic World. Right? That's how Star Wars changed the box office. I mean, that just shows you. And I don't think there's ever any going back, to be honest with you. I really don't. I think it's changed the game forever. All right, let's switch gears. If you want to drop me an email, I do have a new email address for those that have not seen it yet or didn't know. talkshownerd@gmail.com. talkshownerd@gmail.com. Patrick writes that he's seen Force Awakens twice. Once when it came out, and then after the most recent podcast. Said he also liked the idea of Rey being a Kenobi. He says making her Obi-Wan's granddaughter makes sense, but what if Obi-Wan Kenobi had a daughter and got with Luke, and Rey is a Skywalker Kenobi? You know, and I thought about that too as it relates to Rogue One and whether or not, and we don't know fully yet, if Felicity Jones, how great would it be if Felicity Jones in Rogue One ended up being the daughter of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that's how they know to pass on the Death Star plans to Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's how Princess Leia knows that, because we know the movie is about the theft of the first Star Wars plans. The only reason why I don't really buy that anymore is because it really makes the universe super small. At least in the minds of the viewers, I think still they are. You still have to have these characters interconnected, and just because we're showing them on the screen in a movie doesn't mean it's super small. But if you end up having, say, Felicity Jones's character in Star Wars Rogue One being Kenobi's daughter, and then Kenobi's daughter ends up hooking up with Luke, it just seems to be a bit of a stretch. Again, he goes on to say the obvious connection is that she's Luke's daughter, but I'm hoping for a twist. Another theory is that she's related to Snoke. I don't think that's the case either, but combine that with the idea that he's Pelagus, and it's pretty interesting. So if Pelagus fathered Anakin Vader, Rey and Anakin can be related, right? Yeah, but I still am holding firm with Snoke is not Pelagus by any stretch. Let's see. She has the same potential as Anakin, and the lightsaber called to her. It also goes along with her acting capabilities. I think you mentioned in your podcast about how good she would be acting-wise if the dark side came calling. I do agree with that. I do think that there is going to be a temptation for Rey in a much more difficult and profound way to the dark side than what Luke experienced in the original trilogy. And I actually think it might have something to do with Finn. I know there are several new lead female characters that are being cast in for episode 8, and I always kind of felt that wouldn't it be interesting if Rey actually was drawn to Finn and Finn was drawn to her, but they were apart for so long that he ended up finding somebody else within the Resistance. So by the time she got back to the Resistance, he had already found himself a new love. Not unlike the early seasons of Friends, where Ross goes overseas and finds himself a girlfriend, only to arrive back to have Rachel go and want to profess her love to him. Did I really bring Friends into this podcast? I apologize. He wraps up with this. What do you think about Rey winning the first battle against Kylo Ren? I don't think some people realize that he hasn't been trained to use a lightsaber, at least not as much as other Force users. Force doesn't equal lightsaber skills. And what about the people who are upset about that Rey isn't on certain toys? Okay, I'll address that in just a moment, the toy aspect of it. Yeah, I had no problem with the end of The Force Awakens when it came to that battle and Rey being able to hold her own. Look, Kylo Ren had been through he just killed his dad. He's been walking all over Starkiller Base. Probably hasn't had a bite to eat in a long time. Doesn't have his helmet on. He's completely exposed. It's cold outside. He's been shot by Chewbacca's, super bowcaster, which we know is extremely powerful. He got hit in the arm at least once while battling and had to battle Finn, who put up a decent fight. And Rey, really, up until that point, apart from getting thrown up into the tree, hadn't been through a lot. I mean, she'd been climbing around Starkiller Base, but, she hadn't been nearly as damaged as Kylo Ren was. I thought they did a really, really good job of evening out that battle to ensure that it was going to be equally matched. I felt there was more than enough there to explain why she was able to best him. And look, if it hadn't been, nobody picks up on this, if it hadn't been for the ground opening up between them, he wasn't done. I mean, she jacked him up and cut his face, but she didn't cut any limbs off. And while he was injured, I mean, there's nothing to say he couldn't have picked up his tri-saber and gone after her again, channeling the dark side, and still beat her. I mean, she really only won. It was a draw. She won by default because the ground opened up, and she decided to run the other direction. Now, about your question, then I want to talk a little bit about Rey, but about your question about the people who are upset that Rey isn't on certain toys, it really is ridiculous. Most of these toys came out during Force Friday in September, months before the movie came out, and a lot of the toy manufacturers were given specific stipulations and only access to certain characters because of the spoiler aspect of it. The one most recently was the Monopoly game, and that's more of a parental thing in my view. The parents should have been smart enough to go, this game came out again in September, and most of the toys were under, very specific guidelines of what they could create, and only given access to create certain figures because of the concern over the spoilers and keeping the movie fresh when people went and watched it. There was somebody else complained the Millennium Falcon, the bigger Millennium Falcon toy, only included Chewbacca and Finn. Why wasn't Rey in it? Well, that's pretty clear because people didn't want everybody to know right then that Rey was piloting the Falcon in the movie. I mean, I think it's ridiculous. People need to lighten up. There's still plenty of time for more toys to come out. And trust me, Rey is so popular, there'll be plenty of Rey toys to go around, in the near future. The only reason why we haven't got them yet is because I think the next waves are going to end up coming out sometime around the release of the DVD and the Blu-ray. Now, speaking of Rey, and then we're going to talk Rogue One. In a way, I'm trying to stop theorizing who Rey's parents are. And again, this goes back to actually watching other movies. Finally, I've been so inundated with Star Wars. It was almost to a point where I didn't want to watch anything from Star Wars because I was so into Star Wars. And just recently, I've been able to listen to some other podcasts that I listen to that aren't Star Wars related and watch some other movies, now that I've had my fill, or at least feels like I've had a bit of my fill. I still want to get out to the theater again to see it, certainly before it leaves. But it feels like now everybody is trying to work out who Rey's parents are, and I've been doing it too, just because we want to be the one person to go, I figured it out! But the reality is, unless there is some massive leak between now and Episode 8, more than likely, we probably aren't going to find out who are Rey's parents. We're probably not going to find that out. And everybody is focusing on Rey because everybody is expecting this to mirror the original trilogy, in which case there'll be some twist, right? And I think to a certain extent that's probably true. They kept it hidden for a reason. But we also don't know who Finn's parents are. We don't know the background on General Hux. We don't know the background on Snoke. So there's actually quite a few different avenues that they could explore if they're looking to do some big twist. And I hope people aren't disappointed if there isn't one. What happened in Empire Strikes Back in the original trilogy with Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker was just, that's a tough thing to recreate in the Star Wars universe. I mean, you can certainly have twists in other movies, but in the Star Wars universe, that is a very, very tough thing to try to manufacture because of what I spoke about before, and that is we all dissect this so much now and theorize so much that you've heard so many different theories that if they go the route of trying to do a twist, somebody surely will have nailed, 99% of what it is among all the different theories that have been thrown out there. So given that fact, again, I'm almost going, you know what? I'm kind of going to stop theorizing about this. I'll just read what everybody else says. Because I keep going back and forth between whether or not I want her to be a Kenobi or whether or not I want her to be a Skywalker. Because for me personally, I think